Welcome to BizTech's SME Show, where we feature SMEs both small and large, sharing their entrepreneurial journeys and imparting the lessons that they've learned. Now, today's featured company is RPG Commerce and its CEO and founder, Melvin Chee. Welcome to the show, Melvin.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Now, Melvin, walk us through your entrepreneurial journey and your journey through dropshipping and how you got in trouble with Facebook.
Definitely. It's quite a bit of a journey, I guess, to go a little bit back, probably about 10 years ago now when I was a student in Melbourne. So I lived in Melbourne for about 7 years, a year in San Francisco before I decided to come back home here in Malaysia. So I started to learn about digital marketing when I arrived in Melbourne. So a little bit context to that as well. I grew up in a small, tiny town here, Setiawan in Perak, and I never knew about internet. I didn't grow up much with internet as well. We were still using Streamix back then. And when I learned about digital marketing in 2011, 2012, it was really fascinating for me, right? I didn't know that we could sell products online. We could be, touching different areas across the whole Australia back then, trying to sell different kind of products. And that skill sort of brought me into drop shipping eventually in 2015 and 2016. And I think the entire journey of drop shipping was really interesting to me because I left my internship in San Francisco, decided that I didn't want to have a 9 to 5 job, right? I knew that I'm not that kind of person. I wanted to do
And
something
where
on my
did
own.
you intern in San Francisco?
I interned in Udemy in Silicon.
Okay, the online learning company.
That's right. Yes. So I was there for just under a year. It was a year internship, but I didn't complete the entire internship. I decided that it's not what I wanted to do. I left on the 11th month, just a month before the entire end of the entire program, and I moved back home to Melbourne at that period of time in 2016.
Okay, and how did you get into business?
Definitely. So I arrived back in Melbourne. I knew that that's not what I wanted to do. And I sort of went soul searching for a period of time, right? I was like, I didn't know anything else. I graduated with economics and finance background, right? But I didn't know anything else, right? I only knew about digital marketing. And at that period of time, Facebook ads, Google ads was still I would say it's a pretty new thing in 2015, 2016 context here. So I decided, why don't I use that skill set to try to make an opportunity for myself, right? And I dabbled into drop shipping because essentially drop shipping, I do not need any capital to start my business at that period of time. And I was a student. I didn't have much capital at that point of time, right? And I decided to sell just really hype out products or random products that solve problems for consumers and just drop ship them from AliExpress and to the globe, right? And that's how I went into drop shipping eventually.
Now, how did you get in trouble with Facebook?
Definitely, long story. It's a really long story, right? In 2017, I decided that Malaysia could be an interesting place for me, so I came back home in mid 2017. I was in my sort of a bridging gap between trying to get a PR in Australia and trying to understand if I actually want to move back home to Asia. And I know Southeast Asia was very exciting in 2016, 2017 days, right? And I knew that if I wanted to be in that kind of space, I needed to move home. So in 2017, I decided to sort of establish an office here in a co-working space here in KL, and it was just a team of 2-3 guys at that point of time, right? Just trying to figure out if it works or not. If it doesn't work, I can always go back to Melbourne. That was my thinking back then, right? And eventually, drop shipping spurred into I would say, pretty significant thing. Just in over 2 years, we did over about 50 million US in terms of revenue, and
wow.
And I thought that, hey, this is no longer just a few kids running a business right now anymore. It's substantial, and we can make something out from it. And eventually, we were very aggressive in scaling Facebook ads, Google ads, so on and so forth. And I think in late 2017, early 2018, I was called up by Facebook. Right, I received an email from Facebook. I was like, hey, we'll fly you to Singapore. We'll bring you there, and we want to have a chat with you. We want to have a meeting with you. And at that period of time, we knew that we were one of the top spender in the region, right? We were probably spending about $1 million US monthly on Facebook alone. And
wow.
at that period of time, I was flown to Singapore, and I still remember I met the head of compliance of Facebook of APAC, right? And I was like, oh, I knew something is not right here, right? So eventually, I was slapped with two options. Number one, either they penalize us and ban us from advertising, Or number two, we have to switch our business model, because drop shipping essentially is not a terrible model, but there's a lot of leakages in the model itself, right?
Yeah,
Where
there's a certain element of sleaziness that's associated with drop shipping. Unfortunately,
that's
I
right.
think not everybody's like that, but there is a sleaziness
I,
attached to it.
I agree. And because we do not have control over the entire supply chain, we only have the front end control. We don't have the back end control. Front end control, what I mean, it's by selling products, right? Acquisitions, our front end assets, but a lot of back end stuff like delivery experience, product quality, because we drop ship those products, right? So we do not have any ownership of the products. So there's a lot of issues with
Right.
experience, delivery, so on and so forth, that has led to where the entire compliance issue came in. So
Okay,
eventually, yeah,
so eventually, what did you have to do?
definitely. So they provided us two options, right? And I went back home to Malaysia, and I was like, you know what, should I give up and move back home and find a job in Melbourne? And I was like, at a period of time, I was like, at the age of like giving up, and it was a very early journey of my entrepreneurship as well, right? I was like, now I have already decided to leave San Francisco, and now this happened. I was like, either I move back home to Melbourne, get a job, or I will have to, adapt to the new sort of rules or regulations being implemented by Facebook, right? And I think I went home the other time, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna change this, and I'm gonna sort of adapt to it, because I knew end of the day, dropshipping wasn't sustainable in the long run. In the short run, probably yes, we can make tons of money, but in the long run, it wouldn't be something that's still going to be there. And it's true enough, right? In 2018, 2019, Facebook had a massive crackdown on drop shipping, right? PayPal, Stripe started freezing people's account, and your Facebook accounts or even your PayPal and Stripe account are all frozen, right? So hence a lot of issues in drop shipping space. So in 2018, we decided to move out to the D2C space, right? Because we knew that we needed to build something more
Yeah. So
longevity.
the B2C is direct to consumer model,
Direct
correct?
to consumer model. That's right. Yes. So we own the end-to-end chain,
And so this
from product design perspective. So we have a team of fashion and product designers that design all our products. Supply chain team that take care of the warehouses, marketing team that take care of the content, and then of course a support team that take care of the experience of customers. So we own the entire chain without any middleman in the process.
So you design the stuff. So RPG commerce, basically, you design the products, you work with the OEM supplier in China and so forth. And then how does the supply chain then work?
Definitely, because of our markets, majority of markets actually in global. So US is our main markets. 50% of revenue is actually coming from the US. UK, Australia, Europe, and Canada are top 5 regions, even though we are based in Malaysia. But our majority markets are still global, where we have 5 warehouses today in different regions of the world. So Hong Kong is our central warehouse. We have one warehouse in Australia, US, UK, and here one in Malaysia. And different warehouses take care of different regions. So the main products will come from China, and they will disperse to all these warehouses around the world to be fulfilled to our customers.
Okay, so essentially you have physical presence in all of these markets. These
Yes.
5 fulfillment centers, you have a physical presence.
That's right. But we do not own that fulfillment center. We partner with someone that runs a fulfillment center. So essentially,
Okay.
we want to operate as light asset as possible when we build this business. Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit about your team. Now, who are your partners, and how did you all get together?
Definitely. I have 4 partners in the business, including me, 5 of us in the business, right? 2 of them are still in Melbourne today, and by default, it was my brother and my sister-in-law, because I was living with them. I didn't know anyone to sort of partner up with the business, and they were much older than me. They provided me capital to start a business, and then eventually came back home to Malaysia, reconnected with my e-commerce friend that was one of the co-founder of Fit Gear, this local D2C brand here in Malaysia, activewear brand here in Malaysia. And eventually they exited the business and joined RPG in 2018 to start up building out what we are building today. And of course, we went from a team of 5 of us in 2017, 2018, went to 20. And then I think last year was a massive growth for us, right? We went from a team of 20 to about 80 plus, just under 90 today. And we're based out of PJ, Uptown PJ at the moment. The entire team is based out of there. And we are still growing strength to strength today. And I think 2020 has been a very interesting year for us.
Yeah, tell us more. So So the pandemic actually worked well for you. It allowed you to scale. What were the trends that you think that influenced that? What were the key reasons?
Definitely. I think at the start of pandemic, no, it was a massive negative impact because of supply chain. Flights were all cancelled. Our inventories weren't moving at all. We had massive delays, massive backlash from customers. But I think in a month into the lockdown, we noticed there's a huge surge of inventory or real estate on social media, right? Where you have this group of people that are probably not spending 10 hours, 8 hours a day on social media, are spending that kind of hours because they are locked down at home, not doing much. And all these offline consumers that used to spending offline have to sort of offload their spending online, right? And we see a huge surge of guys, probably the guys in the boomers generation, right? And I like to use this example where my parents never shop online, and they started shopping online because of the pandemic, right? Because they needed to purchase their things online and all. So we see a huge surge of new consumers that went on online. And at the same time, a lot of retailers during the start of the pandemic, the bigger retailers, they shut down their advertising budget because of the pandemic, right? That you have a huge amount of inventory on Facebook, on YouTube, on Google, that you actually see a lower cost of acquisitions that are happening. And we sort of capitalized on that and decided to grow at that period of time when everyone tried to be playing safely.
Yeah. So in other words, you were classically aggressive. When people cut back on spending, you started spending more.
That's right. That's right. And because so for advertising game, it's an auction based platform, right? Where supply
Yeah.
and demand. The more advertisers on it, the higher the cost because there's more demand, right? But when all these guys, the big box retailer, they are not spending online, you see a huge amount of inventory available, and that drives the cost down, right? And it's a bit win for us, right? Because we recognize that trend, and because we recognize the trend, because we were in dropshipping when it was the same thing, right? It was very aggressive scaling, huge competitions, and then when we see that, hey, it's time to go, let's go. So it was I think it was a really tricky year last year, right? Where we were prepared to just survive mode, and eventually it became a thriving mode, right? Because of that opportunity that we saw.
Now, Melvin, you've got a couple of brands, and you mentioned that you had already mentioned your key markets overseas. But who are the typical consumers, and what are the brands that you focus on?
Definitely. Today in RPG's portfolio, we have 9 brands on our portfolio in different verticals because our thesis is that we are agnostic to the categories that we're in. So we can be in any categories, whether be it fashion, homeware, kitchenware, every single category, jewelries, pet, women, any sort of industries, right? Because end of the day, our fundamentals are built on 2 things: performance and supply chain. So it doesn't matter what kind of products that we're selling, as long as we understand these 2 really well. So majority of our portfolio brands today are still in apparels. 5 out of 9 of them are in fashion apparel space. But we have more categories that we are building right now that are in non-apparel category and fashion category as well.
Now, Melvin, your stated goal is to build 100 brands by 2025. Why so many, and how do you plan to do this?
Definitely, I think our strategy is very different, right? It's either when we built RPG out, we always had the idea of building a conglomerate of brands, and P&G or Unilever has always been the inspiration, I guess, of where we're trying to get into, right? And I always think it's much doable to build uh, multiple brands to be a giant rather than building one giant over the next 10 years, right? And of course, it's a bonus if we could build one Uniqlo out of the 100 that we built, right? But it's going to be much easier to build the mini Uniqlos of 100 of them and stacking them out each other to build that revenue growth, right? And that's what we discovered to be more doable for us and more feasible because we diversify our portfolio, right? That even 1 or 2 brands that are down during a period of time, because we are seasonal as well, right? Sometimes during the winter, sometimes during the summer, and seasonality will sort of impact us in terms of performance. But by diversifying that out, we don't see a drop across the entire year. And in fact, we see a growth month over month as well.
So will that mean then, because you've got to grow all these categories so fast, that in the direct consumer model, there are, literally one-man companies operating out of Bali. Will that mean that as part of growing your brands, you will be doing some acquisitions, small acquisitions like this?
That's right. So just 3-4 months ago, right now, we raised our Series A with Vertex, which is a subsidiary of Temasek. Recently
How much was that for?
that was just under 10 mil US dollar
Okay.
last year. So we decided to take on a VC funding. One of the reasons is because we are going for that trajectory of growth, and of course, secondly, to acquire companies. So we are looking at smaller size D2C brands, smaller, meaning that anywhere between $500,000 to 2 million US yearly revenue. And we will sort of acquire that and inject that into our ecosystem because we have the backbone of supply chain and performance. So right now, because we're agnostic, right, so we can technically take in any sort of product category to come in and grow them over, 3-4x over the period of time. And that's kind of goal that we are actually moving towards as well.
Now that's it. So you've taken a very different strategic step in terms of taking venture capital money. So obviously, what is the sort of turnover and profits you're doing right now?
Last year, our annualized was about 20 mil US in terms of our revenue. We have double digits EBITDA, profitable. Every single brand's offers are profitable, and we built on the fundamentals of being profitable.
Okay, how much profit? What sort of profits?
It was a double digit EBITDA, so we're in a millions sort of range in our profit on the bottom line. So about 2 to 3 mil as an average US in terms of US dollar, and because all our revenues are in US dollars.
What is the strategy in terms of scaling? What are you looking for to achieve in 2025? Because you're looking at 100 brands. What kind of numbers are you looking at?
Definitely. Two parts of back to our business model again. Two parts that things that we do pretty well, I would say, internally. Number one is definitely brand building. So we have a team specifically right now focusing on just building new brands all the time, and we think we can build 10 brands this year. That's where we're trying to get to 10 to 11 brands this year, and where we're trying to get to 2025 is of course 100 because of built new 10 brands this year in 2021, sorry. And of course, we're hoping to make 1 to 2 acquisitions at least this year. We're still in the process of making our first acquisition. We haven't made our acquisition yet, but we are intending to make this happen this year. So we'll get to about 20 brands by the end of this year.
And what sort of turnover are you looking at in 2025?
We're hoping to 3x this year in 2021 to about 50-60 mil. If possible, in terms of US dollar revenue. It's a very ambitious goal, I think, where we are heading towards too, but I think it's very doable because of that same thesis that we built on, that we built multiple smaller stacks brands rather than one giant brand. And I think hopefully in the next 5 years, we're going to be a multi-billion-dollar company. And I think that's the kind of dream every entrepreneur wants to build towards too, right?
Yes, absolutely. Now, share with me, because obviously you've got this huge growth potential. What are the current trends within the direct-to-consumer market, and why is it really important for offline brands to consider to transition into the digital space? Because obviously an upstart like you can grow so quickly, but traditional brands have some advantages if they move online aggressively. What are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely right. I think number one is definitely the pandemic. The pandemic has sort of accelerated the entire e-commerce growth, right? By 7 years, 5 to 7 years. That's what the study shows, right? So hence a lot of new adoptions of internet users, or a lot of new adoptions of consumers or shoppers online, right? Where these people will have to offload their spending somewhere. And I think it will be a very interesting transition for the offline guys to enter online, right? Because it might sound to be a bit much easier for them to do it, but truth be told, it might not be that easy because larger organizations like offline retailers and all might move slower. Exactly. It might take them a year, 2 years to even execute something that might take only 2 months here in a small size company like us, right? But at the same time, I think that it created a lot of opportunity for SMEs, especially the SMEs here, where people are able to access Shopify to build their storefront, Facebook ads to generate new clients, payment systems like Stripe, PayPal, iPay88, all these platforms that are readily available to plug in literally next day, right? So anyone can be in a business within 24 hours. And I think that's the beauty of internet, right? And I think the beauty of internet at the same time is the scalability, right? Accessibility to the markets, right? That if we're in an internet business, why do we limit ourselves in just Malaysia, just Singapore, but why not the globe? And I think that's something that it's really interesting for people in this generation, or at least in my generation, or in this kind of generation, to actually tap into. And I think taking advantage of what we actually see that's happening today in the world.
Okay, Melvin, I want to ask you something, and we will play on that
Sure.
thought. Okay, if I'm and it doesn't matter, I could be a 25-year-old, I could be a 50-year-old.
For sure.
I've lost my job. What are the opportunities? Because you just said this. What are the opportunities do you think as an entrepreneur you would give advice in terms of what these people could do?
I always believe in this philosophy, right? That there's always opportunity and there's always money to be made as long as you're willing to learn. That's number one, right? And I think now, if you want to learn about building an online business, you don't have to pay any courses, right? Just go on YouTube, just Google dropshipping, just Google D2C or whatever it is, right? There's tons of people that are willing to share free information like that out there, right? And I think that's the opportunity, and that's the beauty of internet again, and that's why internet is created, and that's why I'm so fascinated about internet ever since I came across digital marketing and all, because there's this openness in terms of sharing, in terms of learning from one another, and for entrepreneurs, at least in this region. I know 2020 has been a tough year for everyone, right? A lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of industries were cut, but at the same time, let's look on the other side of the perspective, right? Means there's a lot of opportunities to be created as well, right? When all these guys could go online and start selling online, and I think whether be it any products, any categories, or any services, right? There's always room to actually fulfill a gap or solve a problem in the market through digital marketing or through Facebook or through whatever means or platforms out there. So I think that's a very interesting opportunity that people, or at least the guys here that should look into and take advantage of that end of the day.
Now, Melvin, final question, and it's now a broader question.
Sure.
You've grown a business from 0 to 20 million turnover US dollars and 2 to 3 million profit. What are the business lessons that you have learned so far that you could share with large entrepreneurs?
Definitely. I think
who are already running big businesses.
Definitely. I think the most important thing, I've been asked a lot of times, right? Same questions, whether to it be small, mid-size, or larger entrepreneurs. And I think we are still small today, right? I think is that naiveness and that stupidness of never giving up, right? I was stupid enough to not give up, right? I could have given up, but I was just stubborn enough and stupid enough to say, hey, let's give it another shot. Let's give it another shot. And I think continuously saying that, one day you'll see light at the end of the tunnel, right? I think that was, and we are still in that journey of learning, and we're still in that journey of trying to get to where we want to be one day, right? And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? That if and this is what Elon just said recently in the clubhouse, right? That if you need a word of encouragement to be an entrepreneur, don't be an entrepreneur, right? And I think that's the kind of advice I'll kind of give, right? Never consider whether opportunity is large or small. Let's put your foot in. Let's figure it out. If it's large enough, you will know what to do. If it's small enough, you will know what to do. Because we are human, we have instincts to sort of act on as well. I think that's my kind of like learnings that I've gone through. Even though I'm not there, I'm 26 this year, 27, and I think I'm not. Those are the kind of lessons and journeys that I've learned being a young entrepreneur over the years, and I think it's very important. Hopefully, I'll still hold on strongly to this principle. Maybe when I'm in my 30s or 40s, but I think that stupidness and the naiveness of like, trusting that there's another shot to give it. Let's do it, kind of thing. And I think that's something that I will hold strongly and dearly to.
Hey, Melvin, with that inspiring advice, thank you very much for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank
now,
you.
I'm Brian Fernandez. I've been speaking to Melvin Chee, the founder and CEO of RPG Commerce on BizTech's SME Show. Check out www.biztech.asia for business and technology conversations.